Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
There's a moment, right between swallowing disappointment and letting rage climb up your throat, where your brain does a funny thing. It freezes like it doesn't quite believe what just happened. That's where I was, standing in my tiny galley kitchen, barefoot, staring at the blank space on my fridge where an invitation should have been. The Carter family never did settle well, but this was surgical. No call, no email, not even a guilt text from mom with an awkward emoji at the end. Just silence. I'd heard about the celebration through a Facebook post my cousin tagged someone in, a 40-year wedding anniversary bash for Janice and Ron Carter, black tie, valet only, catered by some place in Napa that does oysters 3 ways. The kind of party where the champagne has a name and the bathrooms have cloth towels instead of paper. And my name? Nowhere. Not even an afterthought. The post had one of those overly filtered photos, Derek, my older brother, looking like a politician who just made another million, standing next to mom in a pearl-colored dress that probably cost more than my rent. He'd planned it all. The flowers, the speeches, the guest list. The guest list. He planned it, and he left me off it. And I knew he did it with a smirk on his face and maybe a joke about how I was probably too busy freelancing or redefining rock bottom to attend. It wasn't the first time I'd been underestimated in that house. But this time, it was deliberate. Public. I called mom 3 times that week. Nothing. Straight to voicemail, like I'd been ghosted by my own flesh and blood. The woman who once made me eat green beans until I threw up wouldn't even say, "We forgot to send it." And Derek? He didn't even bother pretending. He sent a text 2 days before the event. Just 4 words. "You still haven't made it." I stared at the screen for a long time. I even laughed, but not the good kind of laugh. The kind where your mouth moves and sound comes out, but your chest stays hollow. I knew what he meant. In the Carter family, making it was code for money you could show off. Money that came with a logo and a parking space and a corner office. I had none of that. I had a startup that was still in beta, a best friend who lived on ramen and optimism, and a beat-up Prius that refused to die. And, apparently, I had no seat at the family table. But I also had something else. Something I hadn't told anyone. For months, my partner Lena and I had been in talks with a group of investors about taking Greenloop public. Our climate tech, modular carbon recycling hubs for industrial buildings, was getting real traction. We'd signed 2 NDAs, submitted more documentation than a mortgage broker, and had 5 major meetings behind us. Still, I didn't say a word. Not to mom. Not to Derek. Because part of me liked the silence. Liked watching them dismiss me. Liked letting them assume. Because sometimes the best revenge is letting them talk shit while you build your empire in the background. That night, the night before their precious anniversary gala, I made myself a sad dinner, burnt grilled cheese, half a bottle of 2-buck chuck, and a couple of peanut mandams for dessert. I sat on my couch, scrolling through old photos. There was one from Thanksgiving 3 years ago that made me stop. Derek was mid-laugh, mouth wide open like a caricature of confidence, while I sat on the edge of the frame, holding a napkin and biting my lip. That was the night I told them about Greenloop. I said we were prototyping carbon capture in portable units. I was so proud. I explained how it could scale in urban centers, especially in underserved areas. I thought I was explaining the future. But Derek had just raised his glass and said, "So you're building fancy fans?" And everyone laughed. Even mom. Even dad, with his stone face and gruff approval of no one. I sat there and swallowed it, like the green beans all over again. I closed the photo app, opened my email, and there it was. Subject line: Final layout approval. Forbes October feature. I clicked. There, staring back at me, was my own damn face. Hair tamed, blazer sharp, background all clean lines and shadows. The headline read, "The Quiet Revolution, Rachel Carter and the Tech That Could Save the Planet." My heart stuttered. My fingers went cold, then warm, then shaky. Lena had kept it secret from me, the final pic. We'd known the article was coming out, but I hadn't seen the cover. I hadn't thought I'd get the cover. Forbes. Fucking Forbes. I reread it twice. My name, the feature, the photo, the quote. You don't need a spotlight to start a fire. I leaned back. My couch squeaked under me like it always did when I shifted weight. The old window hummed from wind. Somewhere, a car alarm hiccuped in the night. And I sat there, Forbes pulled up on my screen, the echo of my brother's text still vibrating in my chest. You still haven't made it. That was the moment something clicked. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't screenshot it or post it or send it to an ex like a petty flex. I just sat there and smiled. Because now I knew. Now I had the upper hand. Not because they knew who I was, but because they didn't. And that's the sweet spot. When your enemy thinks you're losing, and you're just about to win. I closed the laptop slowly, like a door I was finally locking behind me. Okay, Derek, I whispered, a grin curling at the edges of my mouth. Game on. The morning after the Forbes cover went live felt like waking up after sleeping through a thunderstorm. Everything outside was different, but inside, I still hadn't decided what to feel. My phone had buzzed through the night like a dying bird, shaking itself awake every 10 seconds with another email, another tag. Another text from someone who hadn't spoken to me in years, but suddenly remembered I existed, because now I had a headline and a cover photo and an opinion worth quoting. By the time I made coffee, I had over 100 new emails, 12 voicemails, and a handful of LinkedIn connection requests from people who used to treat me like I was a substitute teacher they didn't need to respect. My ex, Tom, the one who once said I was too into saving the world to be taken seriously, left a voicemail at 5:30 in the morning that started with, "Hey, wow, just saw your face on something," and ended with, "If you're ever in the mood to catch up." I deleted it mid-sentence and didn't even feel a flicker of guilt. The startup's name, Greenloop, was suddenly bouncing across Twitter, getting reposted by climate journalists, tech analysts, and a few verified accounts I'd only ever admired from afar. Lena was already 3 espressos deep and half screaming over the phone, "We made it, we fucking made it, and you look like a damn CEO goddess, Rachel." I laughed, for real this time, and for the first time in years, my shoulders didn't feel like they were holding up the weight of proving myself to everyone in the damn room. But I didn't post anything. I didn't text Mom. I didn't call Derek. I didn't even comment back to the venture capitalist who suddenly remembered he ghosted me last winter after saying our idea wasn't scalable. Instead, I watched the numbers tick up. Pay views. Shares. Inquiries. That dopamine rush tech founders pretend not to crave, pouring into my bloodstream like a shot of revenge-flavored espresso. Honestly, I thought I had about 15,000 followers. But when I checked, the number was, like, 600,010. Wait, no, 601. Okay, math isn't my strong suit, Sumi. The point is, this was happening. Big time. And no one from my family had said a damn word. Not even a passive-aggressive group text from Mom. It was as if I was invisible again, which was exactly how I wanted it, at least for now. I waited until Thursday to send the message. Just a simple text to Derek. "Hey, heard the party's this Saturday. Should I bring dessert?" I imagined him reading it, maybe with a scotch in his hand, maybe leaning back in one of those overpriced leather chairs he liked to buy from catalogs that made masculinity look like mahogany and overpriced watches. I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, he replied. "Rachel, this is for close family only. You still haven't really made it." I swear to you, I read it 5 times. Out loud. Just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Not even a nod to the cover. Not even a fake congratulations. He had to have seen it. He reads Forbes. He breathes Forbes. But nothing. Just that smug little slice of dismissal, like I was still the girl in the corner at Thanksgiving trying to explain climate models to people who thought Tesla was just a car. I didn't reply. I opened my laptop and started looking for ad placement options in the Sunday Times. I didn't want something digital. I wanted paper, ink, something tactile, something real, something their friends in wine clubs and retirement committees could hold in their polished, judgmental hands while they sat around sipping overpriced Chardonnay and asking, "Is this your daughter?" It didn't take long to set it up. I picked a pull quote from the Forbes article. Not the one about carbon capture or industry scale. No. I picked the one that burned just a little. You don't need a spotlight to start a fire. Below it, I added my name. Just my name. No company. No title. No link. Just a little reminder. And I asked them to place it on the same page that would be running a local feature on Derek's party, an article I knew was coming because his PR girl had bragged about it 2 weeks ago on her very public Instagram. The layout preview came in a few hours later. His face on one side, surrounded by guests in formal wear, the caption reading, "Family, Legacy, and 40 Years of Love." And mine alone on the opposite corner. No frills. Just fire. I sat there staring at the proof, my legs crossed under me, bare feet tapping against each other like they were keeping a beat I hadn't heard in years. I remembered the way Derek once told me, "You should just marry rich. You're good at being nice." I remembered how Mom used to say, "Your brother's just under a lot of pressure," every time he mocked me in front of company. I remembered Dad saying, "You're not like the others. You don't need much." Maybe they were right. I didn't need much. Just a headline. Just a fire. Just this one quiet move. And so I clicked submit. A small move, but just the beginning. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but surgical, sharp around the edges, cutting into you with precision while you smile and pretend everything's fine. And that's exactly the kind of silence I wrapped around myself after I submitted the newspaper ad. I didn't gloat. I didn't text Derek. I didn't even check the analytics on the print campaign because this wasn't about numbers anymore. This was about strategy. And the queen never plays loud when she's just getting started. I didn't want revenge that shouted. I wanted whispers. I wanted discomfort. I wanted Derek to start hearing his name in rooms where people used to clap. I wanted his smile to twitch just a little when someone said, "Did you read that thing in the Times?" I didn't want to ruin him. I wanted him exposed, just enough to smell smoke and wonder where it came from. So I called Lena. She picked up on the second ring, her voice already buzzing with caffeine and danger. "Tell me you're ready," she said, like she'd been waiting years for this. I told her I didn't want to play dirty. I wanted to play clean but lethal. I didn't want to make stuff up. I just wanted the truth. The part people like Derek tend to bury in contracts and shell companies and offshore LLCs. Lena knew a guy. Actually, she knew 3. Ex-journalists turned private researchers who'd been sitting on stories the big outlets wouldn't touch because they weren't sexy enough. I paid their fee up front, under an alias. We called it market research because why not make it sound boring while it set everything on fire? 2 weeks later, I had a PDF in my inbox labeled simply, "Quiet Acres, Compiled Evidence." It was almost funny, if funny meant you wanted to throw up. Page after page of zoning requests, fake land trusts, and property transfers that all pointed in one direction, developers scooping up land under poor communities with the promise of revitalization and delivering overpriced condos and dried-out parks. And there, about halfway through the file, sat the logo of Derek's firm. Not front and center, not waving a red flag, but quiet. Just a signature. Just a board connection. Just enough. That's the thing about people like Derek. They think staying behind the curtain means they're invisible, but all it really does is create a perfect silhouette. I passed the file along to an independent publication that covered housing equity. I didn't push them. I didn't say my name. I didn't need to. The story wrote itself. The headline hit a week later. Gentrification's quiet partners, when legacy developers exploit renewal. It wasn't a scandal. Not exactly. But it made ripples. Subtle ones. Conversations at brunches. Shifts in investor meetings. A few partnerships paused for review. And Derek? He posted a selfie that week, tight-lipped, overly posed, the caption reading, "Always proud of the work we do." I could see it in his eyes, though. That twitch. That flicker of panic. That is someone watching me. Kind of awareness. Good. He should be. I didn't say a word. I let the air tighten. Then I bumped into Mom. Of course it wasn't really an accident, but I played it like it was. She was pushing a cart at Whole Foods, staring at kale like it held all the answers, and when she saw me standing in front of the quinoa bins, she froze. Actually froze, like I'd popped out of the meat freezer wearing a red dress and a devil grin. She gave me that tight-lipped smile she saves for when she doesn't know whether to hug or hide. I said hi. She said, "Oh, Rachel, I didn't know you still shopped here." Like I'd moved planets instead of zip codes. I just nodded, pretending not to notice the tension. "Yeah," I said, slow and calm. "It's convenient." And they carry the kind of praise I'm used to hearing these days. She blinked. "What does that mean?" I smiled. "It's loud when you're not used to applause." Her face twitched like a glitch in an old TV. She adjusted the strap of her bag, looked around like someone might be watching, then leaned in just enough to make it feel intimate. "We didn't think you'd want to be around all that noise," she said quietly, the implication hovering like a mosquito that wouldn't leave. "You always preferred small things. Quiet work." She meant that as a kindness. As a jab. As an excuse. I just nodded, because sometimes silence is the heaviest thing you can drop. We parted ways, and I thought that would be the end of it. But then she doubled back. I felt her behind me in the soup aisle, her cart abandoned near the lentils. "Rachel," she said, almost a whisper, like she was saying my name in church. "There's something about your father and Derek, something you don't know." I turned slowly, letting the moment stretch like a rubber band on the edge of snapping. She didn't finish the sentence. She just looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen since I was 12 and caught her crying in the laundry room, eyes full of something between fear and regret. I said nothing, not yet, because now I knew something bigger was coming. And queens? They wait. They listen. They never flinch before the next move. There's a particular kind of rage that doesn't explode outward like fireworks, but grows cold and smooth like black ice under your feet. You don't see it until you're already falling, and when you hit the ground, it's not loud, it's just final. That's what it felt like when I opened the manila folder Lena slid across the coffee shop table one overcast Tuesday, the sky hanging heavy like it was waiting for my reaction. She didn't say anything. She just sipped her Americano, leaned back in her seat, and gave me a look that said brace yourself, like she knew the ground was about to give. Inside the folder were 22 pages of documentation, loan forms, business registration papers, bank statements from nearly 2 decades ago. The kind of thing you'd only find if you were digging with intention and knew what rot smelled like under a layer of polished marble. My name was on the paperwork. Rachel Carter, co-owner of something called Carter Future Holdings, LLC. I didn't even recognize the business, much less remember ever signing anything. It had defaulted on a 6-figure loan in 2006, the same year I was working 3 jobs and still couldn't get approved for a used car loan without crying in the parking lot. The registered address was a P.O. box in a neighboring county. The signature line had mine on it, sloppy, oddly curved, like it had been traced from memory, and the cosigner? Ron Carter. My father. Of course. The next hour felt like watching someone else's life unravel and realizing too late that it was your own all along. All those years I thought I was just bad with money, thought I was unlucky, thought maybe the world was just tilted against me a little harder than everyone else. It wasn't chance. It was sabotage, signed in ink and buried in bureaucratic shadows by the 2 men who were supposed to protect me. I sat there, barely blinking, while Lena watched me the way you watch someone near the edge of a rooftop, waiting to see which direction they'd lean. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even curse. Not yet. I just stood up, thanked her quietly, walked to my car, and drove straight to the house I hadn't stepped foot in since I was 34, and Dad told me, "You're too sensitive to survive in business." I rang the doorbell with the same hand that had been forged into financial prison bars by a man who taught me how to parallel park and shake hands with my shoulders back. He opened the door like nothing had ever happened. Like he wasn't the architect of my smallest failures. When I held up the folder, he didn't even flinch. "You signed it," he said, like facts were feelings and feelings were irrelevant. "You were 22. You needed help." I stared at him, trying to remember if I had ever needed help signing away my credit score or my chance at a normal loan. "You forged my name," I said slowly, like I was explaining to a child who'd broken something and tried to glue it back together with denial. "You co-signed the loan, used my identity, let it burn, and never told me." He shrugged, actually shrugged, and then said it. "You weren't going anywhere anyway." It landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Heavy, quiet, sickening. That was the moment I knew I could never forgive him, not because of the money, not even because of the betrayal, but because he truly believed I wasn't worth protecting. I turned around and left, his front door still open behind me like an unanswered question. That night, I slipped into a borrowed evening gown that Lena swore made me look like I invented fire and walked into the fundraising gala I wasn't technically invited to but had every right to dominate. I let the clicks of my heels speak louder than any family name ever could. The ballroom buzzed with champagne and old money, people circling like bees around name tags and last names that opened doors without ever knocking. Halfway through the evening, the lights dimmed and the MC stepped up to the mic, her voice ringing out clear and proud as she introduced the next honoree in Forbes' Women to Watch series. They said my name. Not Rachel, not MS. Carter, Rachel Carter, co-founder of Greenloop, climate innovator, and one of the most disruptive minds in environmental tech today. The crowd clapped. Stood, even. I walked up the stage, every step rewriting the story my family had written without my consent. I didn't glance at the crowd until I did. And there they were. My parents, seated near the center. Mom, stiff and blinking like she was trying to keep the tears in and the shock down. Dad, arms folded, jaw clenched, looking like someone who just realized the ice had cracked under his feet. And Derek, with that fake tan and tighter-than-necessary tux, was pale. Actually pale. The same man who told me I hadn't made it looked like he'd just been sucker-punched with a headline. I thanked the audience, thanked my team, and said one line that wasn't on the speech I'd submitted. The hardest thing I ever had to do wasn't building the company, it was surviving the people who said I never would. The applause thundered. I didn't stay long after the photos. I had no interest in cocktails or fake congratulations or Dad cornering me in the hallway with a justification in his teeth. I just wanted out. As I left through the side entrance, someone in a dark suit approached me quickly and handed me a thick envelope, sealed with one of those gold embossed stickers rich people love to use when they're trying to look important. From Ron Carter, the man said, then turned away like he didn't want to be part of what was inside. I got in the car, tore it open without thinking, and there it was. A non-disclosure agreement. Signed by my father. Requesting my silence. Offering compensation. I stared at it, every muscle in my body going still, except my heart. That thing was roaring. Because if they were trying to buy my silence now, then what else were they still trying to hide? It didn't take me more than a minute to decide that I wouldn't be signing the NDA, not because I had some grand vision of public vengeance, or because I was hell-bent on dragging my father's name through the mud, but because I had finally reached a place where silence, their favorite weapon, no longer held any power over me. For years, silence was the language we spoke in the Carter house, things left unsaid, questions dodged, truths tucked into drawers no one dared open, and now they wanted to bind me in it legally, with compensation that smelled like guilt and tasted like rot. I didn't even finish reading the last page. I just scanned the figure they were offering, more than enough to buy a new car, a down payment, maybe even fund a second startup, and felt nothing. Not anger, not confusion. Just a hollow stillness, like when you clean out a closet and realize you didn't miss any of the things you're throwing away. The next morning, I slid the NDA into an envelope, attached a note that said only no comment, and mailed it to a journalist I trusted, not the kind that chased clout on Twitter, but the kind who asked hard questions even when they made people squirm. She didn't respond right away, and I didn't expect her to. Instead, I waited. And while I waited, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I met with my mother, Janice, one final time. I texted her a date, a time, and a location. The old bakery on Maple Street where she used to take me after dentist appointments when I was a kid, when I still believed that sugar could fix pain and that my mom was the softest place in the world to land. She arrived 5 minutes late, hair done too tightly, face drawn with a weight I hadn't seen before. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was the first crack in the image she'd spent decades polishing for public consumption. We sat at a small table near the window, the same one we used to sit at when I was 9, and she let me get 2 cookies instead of 1. She didn't order anything, just stirred a glass of water and stared at her own reflection in the window like she didn't recognize it. I read the article, she said, after several minutes of small talk that neither of us believed in. The one about Derek's company. I didn't respond. There was no reason to confirm or deny anything. She knew. I should have stopped it, she said, voice shaking like she was pushing the words out through a storm. Back then, when your father brought you those papers to sign, I knew something was wrong. I knew you didn't understand what you were being pulled into. She paused, waited for me to jump in, to offer something, maybe forgiveness, maybe comfort, but I let the silence hang between us like wet laundry that no one wanted to touch. I let the men in this family define what winning looked like, she said finally, her eyes red now, hands wringing the edge of her sleeve like she was trying to wring out the years. And I let them convince me that you were just lost. That you'd figure it out or fade away. That one stung. I didn't show it. I just stared at her, feeling the weight of what she wasn't saying louder than anything else in the room. I was never lost, I said. I was building. Quietly. She nodded. Maybe she believed me now. Maybe it was too late. Maybe it didn't matter. I didn't lash out. I didn't cry. I didn't give her a hug on the way out or promise to call. I just left. Calm. Whole. Untethered. The exposé dropped 3 days later, a clean, deliberate takedown of shady land acquisitions, environmental violations, and the quiet corruption of community redevelopment grants. Derek's firm wasn't the headline, but it was the shadow in every paragraph. The kind of piece that doesn't scream scandal, but whispers disgrace across boardrooms and donor lists. My name never appeared. I stayed quiet. Classy. Vicious. And when the calls started coming, to Derek, to the board, to Dad's country club, I didn't say a word. I let the silence speak, this time for me. 2 weeks later, I signed the paperwork to purchase the small but valuable strip of real estate directly adjacent to Derek's corporate headquarters. Not flashy, just functional. The kind of place that used to be a storage warehouse and would, in a few months, become a glass-walled tech incubator for young women who needed someone to believe in them before the rest of the world caught up. I named it quietly. I didn't put my name on the building. I didn't invite my family to the ribbon cutting. But I made sure the press release landed in every inbox that used to ignore me. The next few months passed like a long exhale. No family calls. No attempts at reconciliation. Just peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come with applause or confetti, but with the knowledge that you no longer have to prove anything to people who once bet against your existence. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, as I sat at my desk overlooking the courtyard where our first cohort of interns was gathering with clipboards and backpacks, my assistant dropped a thin, slightly crumpled envelope on my desk. No return address. Just my name, Rachel Carter. Inside was a photo, old and sun-bleached, of me standing in front of a whiteboard with half a dry erase marker in my hand and a smudge of green ink on my cheek. I was smiling, genuinely smiling, the kind that doesn't know it's being photographed, the kind that doesn't expect the world to notice. There was a note scrawled on the back in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. "You made it." Before they even saw it. I stared at it for a long time, something soft and unfamiliar rising in my chest. Regret? Relief? Closure? Maybe all of it. Maybe none. Then I stood up, walked to the edge of the room, and let the photo slip from my fingers. We heard the sound of it fluttering to the ground, just once. But we never saw where it landed.